All right, well, welcome to this month's Portals Community Call. It's March 2024. I'm Jason Gumper from MS Dynamics World. Really pleased to be able to help host today's event with focus, as you can see, on Power Platform Admin Center. Our other host and presenter, once again, as always, is Nicholas Hayduk. It's great to have him here once again. A couple notes as we get started. First, you can enter your questions anytime. Look for the questions block in the webcast interface, and both I and Nick will be keeping an eye on that. We are also recording today's event, so we will be sharing that with everyone who registered as well. So Nick, with that, I'm going to hand things over to you.
All righty, let's get into it. Yeah, welcome everyone. Today's topic will be the Power Platform Admin Center. So I've got no slides prepared for that part, so we're literally just going to kind of jump in, screen share right into the Power Platform Admin Center, and we'll look at all the various pieces that we've got access to and all the administrative features that we've got there. So that's the plan for today. So I guess we'll start as always with an introduction. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. My name is Nicholas Hayduk. I'm the president and a software engineer with Engineered Code Consulting, Inc. We are a Microsoft Power Platform partner based here in Regina, Saskatchewan. We do primarily Power Pages work. We've also got our new EC Learn learning management system that we built for the Power Platform. So a few different things going on at the company right now. I am a Microsoft MVP. I've been working with Power Pages or the product that became Power Pages here for the last, it says 10 plus years. We're getting close to 15, I think. My career began with ADX Studio in 2009. ADX Studio was the company that originally built Power Pages and was acquired by Microsoft in 2015. If you're not already connected with me on LinkedIn, please feel free to do that. You can also catch all the different content we do on Twitter, and that content includes a blog that we do about once a month, our YouTube channel, in addition to having these videos there. We also do a weekly approximately 2-minute tip, although I think for the next few weeks it's getting closer to 3 minutes, but kind of short tips that we do and release every Tuesday. We've got a couple of years. I think we're into the 250 tips at this point, 260 maybe. As well as crm.audio is where you can find the Refresh the Cache podcast that I co-host with George Dubinsky. We do have a new episode of that coming out shortly regarding the Power Platform release notes. So keep an eye out for that as well. So connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter if you want to kind of stay up to date on all the various content that we do, all typically focused around Power Pages. Okay, and as always, just want to extend my thanks and appreciation to Jason and the entire team at MS Dynamics World for their support over the last, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years we've been doing this now. I've known Jason a little bit longer than that, but he's always been, a great friend. Always nice to catch up with him in person at the conferences. So really appreciate all of his support, not only through this, but kind of my whole kind of Power Platform journey. So thank you to Jason and his team. All right, what's our agenda? So we've got a little bit of news, kind of some late breaking news here in the last couple of days, some new things on the Power Pages blog. Then we will dive into today's topic, which, as I mentioned, is we're just gonna browse around and go through all the different features that we've got in the Power Platform Admin Center. We'll talk about the date and time of our next community call, and if time allows, we'll leave some time for some general Q&A. So if you do have any questions, whether it's about today's topic or just Power Platform, Power Pages specifically, please feel free to drop those in the questions block. All right, so let's talk about what portal news we have. So as I mentioned, there were a couple of new posts over the last couple of days. Maybe the exciting one is the fact that Bootstrap version 5 is now generally available. So that means if you're one of those organizations that doesn't want to use things before they're out of preview, which is completely understandable and probably advisable, you can now use a Power Pages site that uses Bootstrap version 5. So that's pretty exciting. Now, it is important to note that if you currently have a Power Pages site and you are wanting to migrate from version 3 to version 5, um, you can do that, but the tool that you use, Microsoft provides a tool to do some of the migration if you want to use it. That tool is still technically in public preview. So the tool is in preview. However, that's kind of a tool that kind of works offline. So it's not, once you do the conversion, as long as you've validated everything, you wouldn't have any preview code running in your production environment, because all it does is convert your code, convert your markup. So it's not something that's running live. So the actual live code that runs the Power Pages websites for Bootstrap 5 is generally available. Now, not all of the templates have been upgraded to use Bootstrap version 5. Specifically, I think a lot of or all of the Dynamics 365 templates. So if you're using customer self-service, employee self-service, partner, or community, if you're using those templates, even if you installed them today, you won't see them in Bootstrap version 5. I believe you do have to be in the enhanced data model for that to work as well. So it's some of the newer kind of starter templates there that are available in Bootstrap version 5. And so just because Bootstrap version 5 is GA, unfortunately, you just can't assume that every single template out of the box is available when you install it, but you can go through the upgrade process for any of those templates. If you really want version 5, you can go through the upgrade process if you want. So even if the template isn't installed as version 5, if you want to use one of those templates and you want to skip right to version 5, install them, go through the upgrade process, and that should work. We've already worked with some clients that have gone through that process. So even those dynamic templates have been, for the most part, upgraded to version 5. Just they haven't updated the actual the starter templates as they are installed. The other one here that I have at the top of my list is modern lists. So this is essentially a reimagining of the markup of the code for the lists functionality. So this is actually very cool, and I think has been under publicized a bit. So essentially, right now, when you go and you have your list on your Power Pages form, it's kind of looked that same way for the last, I don't know, 10 years. And so Microsoft has kind of reimagined and added functionality to those lists. So you are now able to use that new modern list control. And I believe there's just essentially a little switch that you can flip in the Power Pages Design Studio, where you can say, hey, I want to use the new list versus the old list. So if you are in the middle of a project right now, I would strongly recommend taking a look at flipping that switch, see what that looks like, because yeah, I think it's the name tells it all. It's a little bit more modern, and I do expect that's where they're going to be focusing on in the future, any new features. So yeah, take a look at the modern lists functionality. Last one on this list here is the Code Explained. So this is our best friend Copilot. So there's a couple different ways you can access this, but essentially it's in the VS Code integration that exists for Power Pages. So the ability to I think you can actually right click on some code and say, hey, explain to me what this does, or you can essentially copy and paste that code into Copilot and have it explain to you what that means. And so it's able to, understand the context of being in Power Pages and how that code would apply specifically, to Power Pages. So those are the three blog posts that have been released over the last months, essentially since we last chatted. Yeah, Bootstrap version 5, go after it. It's something where they haven't announced a deprecation for version 3, but we know it's coming. I don't know the dates. If I had to guess, you're going to have years, probably plural to move. But yeah, I don't expect them to support version 3 indefinitely. So the clock is ticking. So I would say start planning for how you're going to move to Bootstrap version 5. I see a question from Jim. Is there an easy way to determine the current Bootstrap version for a site? Yeah, I'm trying to think of the easiest way. Like you can quickly just look at, like if you look at the markup, it's pretty evident from the markup what what version it is. But that's like a little bit more developer. Like let me, that's a great question. Let me see if that's maybe something we'll run into here in the Power Platform Admin Center to see if there is, something right in there that tells you. I don't know the exact answer to, like, I don't know if there's an easy way other than like, yeah, if you pointed me to a site, you can look at the actual CSS and it'll tell you whether it's Bootstrap 3 or 5. But let's see, maybe we'll discover that in the as we're going through the Power Platform Admin Center. Okay, the only other news here is just a shameless plug. If you like what you've seen in this session and you're more on the admin side, the governance side, I'm doing a session for some folks down in Australia. The essentially the session will be Power Pages governance. So it's for the Center of Excellence user group. They're based, like I said, in Australia. I think maybe based in Sydney. So it's a little bit later on in the evening for us. It occurs at noon Sydney time on March 27th. So for us folks here in North America, that's kind of the evening of Tuesday, March 26th. So next week. So if you want to see a little bit more on kind of the governance side of things, which we'll be talking about here as well, because a lot of that happens through the Power Platform Admin Center. If you're interested and want to dive a little bit deeper, they did say, hey, they're happy if anyone joins. So you don't have to be from Australia or part of the group necessarily. If that's a topic that interests you, feel free to join us for that. Okay. So, like I said, today's topic, Power Platform Admin Center. I've got no other slides, so let's bring this up on my screen and let's just start exploring all the various features that we get through the Power Platform Admin Center. So I'm just going to refresh this. This is the home page of my Power Platform Admin Center that I have for my development environment that I use for all sorts of, trying things out, presentations, that sort of stuff, community events. This is my environment. So if you're looking for Power Pages stuff specifically, you can find it under resources and you'll see Power Pages sites. The other thing you can do is if you go to environments, and let's just pick this one. If I go into a particular environment, you can also access the Power Pages site specifically for that environment if it happens to load over here. So I can click Power Pages sites, and now I'm seeing the site specifically for that environment. This is useful, obviously, if you're in an organization with lots of Power Pages and sites and lots of Dataverse environments. For the most part, we're dealing with organizations that are dealing with a little bit less. So I don't often, it's a few extra clicks to get there this way. So for the most part, I'm going through this way. And so when I click on this Power Pages sites under resources, sorry, I just noticed here's a question. Ryan, for the question from Ryan Monks is, how do you register for May 26th? You don't. Essentially, if you find on our social feeds, there's essentially a direct link for the Teams call. So there's no registration required. Just get that link put in your calendar, and you can join the call when it happens. Okay, so when we get to our kind of main screen here, we can see that we can manage our site. So this is a list of all of the sites that I have in this particular tenant. So you can see it's telling me which environment it's in. I've got a couple different environments here. We can see, is it configured, what its ID is, which environment it is, what's created on, the type. So in this case, you can see I have one production, and I have 3 developer websites. We can also do some filtering here. So which ones are public? I think we just found a bug here. Yep. So which ones are public? This thing kind of covers the thing here, but which ones are trials, which ones are production site, and which ones are suspended. So we've got these different filtering here, but essentially this is where we've got our list of all the different Power Pages sites across our tenant. On this screen, we've got one of our governance controls. So if you want to disable anonymous access to Dataverse, and so this applies specifically to Power Pages, but if you essentially want to turn off the ability for anonymous users to access Dataverse data, you can do that here. So if I were to click this, Where do I want to disable anonymous access? I can say for none of the sites, which is my setting right now, specific sites, all sites except specific sites, or all sites. So this is one of those governance control things that we'll be chatting about next week for sure. And again, the idea here is that without this setting in Power Pages, it's up to the administrator of the Power Pages site to determine what access anonymous users get. So there's the anonymous users web role, and you can decide to give them access to essentially whatever you choose. You can give them read access, write access to all of the tables that you might want. Now, as an administrator, as the person in charge of the of this tenant, you may decide I don't want to give anyone that particular control, or there may be specific sites where we don't want to enable that. So this allows you to apply a tenant-wide setting across your site that the administrators of the site wouldn't be able to override. What else do we have in here? We've got a few of these dashboards. So these are, as you can see in preview, these have come out in the last few months or so. But essentially, there's some dashboards here built in Power BI that give you different stats. In this case, on the security dashboard, you can see that it's telling us how many of our sites do we have anonymous access enabled for. So we can say I've got 3 sites. I can click the details, and I can see which of those I have access to. The web application firewall, we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. Let's see here. Just gonna pause here for a second. Okay. So we've got the web application firewall. We'll talk about that in a second, but you can see that none of my sites do I have that disabled for. You can also view the details of external authentication. So I can look at the different sites and I can see which sites do I have external authentication enabled on. And you can see that it's all the ones that aren't Azure AD. So in my case, you can see that these are the ones I have external authentication enabled on. And I believe that includes the local auth, because I haven't configured anything other than local auth on those ones. You can see here that it's categorizing the different Power Pages sites that you have as whether the site security health is standard, enhanced, advanced, or no results. So this is based on the site checker. So what it's doing is when you run the site checker, these different statuses are based on how many of the specific rules pass or fail. Microsoft does provide some, let me just click on this link, some documentation on, is it here? No. They do provide documentation on what it takes to get into these different statuses. So obviously, the more enhanced you are, the better, or the more advanced you are, the better. So if you want to see the details, you can click this, and that's going to take you over to the site checker for this particular website. So this is the NHPR, and it's going to basically load the results of my site checker, which again, we'll look at a little bit more detail when we get to the specific page. So essentially, at a glance, you can see what is the health status of all of the different sites across your tenant. Finally, what you can see over here is the authentication providers, a breakdown of which authentication providers are being viewed or used across your different sites. And you can see here, for the most part on my test sites, I just leave the default Azure AD, or Entra ID as it's now called, enabled, as well as the local sign-in. So I can review that here and I can see which ones specifically are using that. Next, we've got analytics. So this is giving you some data about how many users are actually using your Power Pages site. Now, my test sites or my trial sites have relatively low use, but this is where you can see, you can filter based on which site we're doing, you can filter on times, but you can see things like how many users we have, monthly active users, weekly active users, daily active users, whether they're authenticated or anonymous, and the month-over-month monthly active users. Now, this is all, this is super helpful information to know, but the thing to compare this, if you look down here, is just this note, is that some people may assume that this is exactly what licensing is going to be, but you have to keep in mind that when it comes to Power Pages licensing, not all users are the same. If a user has a Power Apps license, they do not count against the licenses that your license allocation. So they will appear in this. So all users appear kind of in this list, but your licensing should be equal to or less than whatever you see here, because all the users that appear in these stats don't necessarily consume licenses. So you can change to your different environments here, different sites, your time durations, and you can see how active your sites are. Okay, quick question check. Okay, I don't see any questions, so that is good. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to deep dive a little bit more into what we see when we open up a particular site. Let's open this one. So if I click on one of these, it opens up this screen where we see a whole bunch of different details. So this site details here tells us what's the URL of our site. It gives us the option to connect a custom domain. So if you've ever been through the process of, you don't want the .powerappsportals.com and you need to upload an SSL certificate, connect the custom domain, all that sort of stuff, that's all done through this interface. So if you click connect custom domain, it's going to give you a step-by-step here where you either upload or use an existing SSL certificate. You put in your host name, validate the domain, create the SSL binding, and kind of go through this process. This process does require that you upload your SSL certificate. It must be a password protected PFX file. In fact, I did have someone asking me about that earlier this week. That can be a little tricky to get if you're not familiar with that process. You generally can't just buy one of those online. When you buy an SSL certificate, you have to go through the process of doing a certificate signing request. Generally, if you have access to a server that has IIS, that's probably the easiest way. You can generate the CSR and then create the certificate within IIS on the computer that has it, and then you can export that as a PFX file. If you already have a certificate in some other format, the PEM files or the certificate files, then your most likely bet there is to use the OpenSSL command line tool, which can allow you to create a password protected PFX file from there. You need to have the private key, so you need to make sure you've got a certificate that has the private key in there. And there are a list of, it's got to be, I think, 2048 encryption, and there is a list of requirements there, but it is possible with the OpenSSL tool to do that. Or again, if you've purchased one from scratch and you have access to a server with IIS, that's probably the easiest route there as well. So by going through this steps, the other thing you have to do is setting up the DNS entry. So you have to create a CNAME record from your custom domain that points to your Power Pages, the powerappsportals.com domain. So that's kind of the step here to add a custom domain, and that's all done here through this interface. If you want to, as well, if you chose something when you installed the site and you want to choose a different domain for the .powerappsportals.com domain, you can do that here as well. Beyond that, if you click see all, this is where I was wondering if we'd maybe see the Bootstrap version. I'm not seeing it here. You do see which data model you're in, so whether you're enhanced or standard. Obviously, we've got the name, we've got the site URL, the audience, which honestly doesn't really do anything, the site visibility, so whether your site is public or private, the owner, whether it's production or sandbox or developer. We've got the early upgrade. Sometimes I get asked about what does early upgrade mean. And so just to be clear, when it comes to upgrading Power Pages, there's really kind of two sides of it. There are the solutions that exist in your Dataverse environment, and then there's the actual website code that is running on the Azure server that hosts your website. When we talk about early upgrade, that refers to the website code. So if you check that box, if you say, yes, I want to be enabled for early upgrade, that means that earlier in the month, generally Power Pages releases, there's generally about once a month. So if you're on the early upgrade list, you're going to get your site upgraded earlier in that month versus later on in that month. It doesn't, there's no way to stop you from being upgraded. All the sites get upgraded. But early upgrade is a way to say, hey, put me at the front of the list. Generally, that's great for sandbox development test environments, and maybe on production you would leave it as no, so that way if there are any issues you might see them on your development environment before they make their way to production. So yeah, generally keep that yes for anything non-production and no for anything that is production. Site state, again, you can flip that on and off. The site development status, the application ID tells you that's the application within Azure AD, or within Microsoft Entra ID now, I guess. That is the actual app registration, the client ID of the app registration used to communicate between the website and Dataverse. So sometimes you have to go and you have to check the permissions on that thing. That tells you what the ID is. And then obviously this is telling you which Dataverse organization is tied to it. If you click the edit button, you'll see that some of this is editable. So you can change the name, you can change which website this points at. So within a single Dataverse environment, you can have many websites. So if you want to change which one this points at to, you can change that. You can see I've got a number here. That's helpful if you maybe have some that kind of went dormant. If you don't use a site for a while, Microsoft will essentially remove the Azure resources associated with that website, but they never touch the data in Dataverse. So that data will remain there. So if you want to, you can just take another website and point it at that. Again, we've got the site development status. That's where we can check the box. And some of these other things you can change, but just not through this particular screen. So that kind of covers the site details area. Next, I'm going to just look here at what we have in the menu bar. So under site actions, we've got some options. So one is restart the site. That's pretty self-explanatory. What it's going to do is it's actually going to reboot the Azure Web App server that hosts your site. So reboot it, turn it on, turn it off again. If for whatever reason you want to shut down the server, you can do that here. So you actually, that will send the command to Azure Web Apps to shut down the site, and then that'll turn into a button that allows you to restart the site or to turn it back on. If you don't want this site anymore, you can delete the site. Now, to be clear, that will not touch any of the solutions in Dataverse. It will not touch any of the data in Dataverse. That will only delete the Azure Web App resources associated with it, or any configuration that sits outside of Dataverse that Microsoft holds for you. So deleting the site, for the most part, isn't as scary as it might sound, because recreating that site is relatively straightforward, because most of the data that's around your site, basically anything that's not in this portal. So for example, if you have some IP restrictions, you'd have to set those up again. If you have, whether it's the site visibility permissions, some of these performance and protection things, those are settings that reside outside of Dataverse. But for the most part, your actual site itself, the functionality of the site, is maintained when you delete it, so you can recreate it if necessary. Custom errors and diagnostic logs. I'll kind of talk about those together. Those are super useful features. We were using those a couple of weeks ago to debug some issues that, if you have an error on your Power Pages site and it just says, oh, an error has occurred, contact your administrator for more information. Thankfully, if you're in the site, you are the administrator, so you can find out what that is. So the enable custom errors, in my case, I actually would disable that. But when you have custom errors, what happens when a kind of catastrophic error happens on a page when it's being attempted to be shown to the user, and you get that kind of white screen of death, what you can do is say, I don't actually want you to show a generic error to the users. I want to see that full stack trace. So what you do is you disable custom errors. So in my case, I've already disabled that. I was playing around with it a little bit. But what you want to do is, if you are interested in seeing more details about the errors, you can disable the custom errors, and what you'll get is like an ASP.NET stack trace of the errors, giving you a lot more details about what's going on. Something that's very nice to have in development or test, probably not great to have that turned on in production, because it does kind of give away some secrets to the outside world. So for the most part, that's something you want to turn on. You want to leave custom errors on in production, and the other environments you can do that. Felix is asking, if I need the site offline because I don't want portal users to access it anymore, shutting down the site the best option? Actually, let me get to that question in a second because we'll talk about maintenance mode. I'll just finish up here with the logs. So with the custom errors, again, that's about visibility onto the site itself. So if you're on the site and you request a page and there's an error, you can see the details in that on the site. The diagnostic logs, and I mentioned how with the custom errors, you probably don't want to have that turned off in production. What you do want in production are diagnostic logs. So when you go to enable diagnostic logs, what you can do is you give it a Azure storage connection string. So you set up your blob storage in Azure, and you get the connection string from that. And then what you do is you paste it in here, and you say, when logs occur, I want you to save it to my Azure storage blob. So that allows you to see what's happening. Again, super useful when you're getting some kind of weird errors. And you can get weird errors when we ran into a bug where a view, like the view seemed like it should work, and there were just certain pages on that view that would fail. Like you'd go to that, page number 12, and the view would just fail. And it turned out that there was some data on that page that the portals wasn't handling very well. Essentially, it was a bug, but rather than having to go through a whole support ticket with Microsoft, we were able to identify that it had to do with the fact that it was trying to show a currency column from a related table when the primary table didn't have currency on it, which should be fine. But the way Power Pages, the bug was essentially that if it's trying to show a currency, Power Pages looks at the primary table to get the currency information, and in that case, the primary table doesn't have any currency fields on it, so it didn't know where to get that from. But that at least allowed us to mitigate the issue. We were able to remove the offending column from the view, and we were able to figure out what was going on there. So the diagnostic logging is super helpful for production issues because you can have that turned on and you're not disclosing that to the outside world. It's going directly to your Azure storage container that you supply here with the connection string. Okay, and the last thing on this list is the enable maintenance mode. So to Felix's question here, yes, you could just turn off the website and it will show an Azure page showing this, this web service is stopped, or you can enable maintenance mode. And so if you enable maintenance mode, this essentially will replace the entire portal with a single page that just says, sorry, the site's under maintenance, not available right now. You can either say, I want the default page, or you can say, I want to provide a custom page. And you can see here, again, using blob storage, you can put an under construction page yourself up. So this would be my recommendation. The turning the site off gives you kind of a generic, this page, this website or this web app has been stopped. Using a maintenance page will just give the users a little bit more of a friendly view of what's going on, and you can provide some messaging as to when the users should expect and can come back. So definitely suggest using the maintenance mode if there's ever a reason that you don't want people accessing your website. All right, so we've kind of covered all the site actions. There's also another menu here that allows you to do a few things. So one thing you can do is if you want to change which Dynamics 365, or in this case, when you see Dynamics 365 here, think Dataverse. So if you want to manage your Dataverse environment, you can go in here and you can say, I want to actually connect it to a different environment. So you can do that here. You can also, if the URL of your Dataverse environment changes, so it's the same environment, but you can update the URL for that environment. So if you do that, then you want to use the update Dynamics 365 URL. You can also do the metadata translation. So if you're doing multilingual and you've got multiple languages in there and you've imported some custom tables that have multilingual in them as well. Using this metadata translations, you can use that to get the latest versions in your Power Pages as well. Finally, if you are using either the field service or project service extension for the partner portal, those can be installed here. Okay, let's go to this security panel. So IP restrictions, relatively self-explanatory. This allows you to restrict which IPs can access your Power Pages site. So if you know that all of your users are coming from a particular location and you want to lock it down, you can come in here and you can put in IP addresses. Now you can see here, it's not available if I have the CDN enabled. So not all the features work together. Yeah, so you can basically add, I can't right now because I've got the CDN, but you can basically set up rules here about saying, any IP addresses within this particular range are allowed to access my server. So if you've got some kind of firm security requirements and you know where users are coming from, this is most often the case for an internal portal where you can control or you do know the IP address of users. So that's a handy feature. Custom certificates. This is a relatively advanced developer topic. So the one thing I'll tell you is this note right here is the important thing. Custom certificates are not for SSL certificates. So this has nothing to do with a custom domain. This is purely for the OAuth implicit grant flow functionality, that when you request a token, you can have that certificate signed by a custom certificate. So this is where you can upload your custom certificate for that. So this has nothing to do with custom domains. This has to do with using implicit grant flow to get an authentication token from Power Pages. If you want to do SSL certificates, that is where you would manage them here. So once you've uploaded some, it will allow you to manage those certificates here. Website authentication key. We do see sites, we get the occasional question about the website authentication key. This is something that must be updated on a relatively, it's every few years or whatever it is. So you can see mine's 2025. If you don't click the button, your site will go down. Microsoft does provide warnings. They'll send you emails saying, hey, your key is going to expire. When you click the button, it does cause your site to go down for a couple minutes as everything kind of gets updated. So that's why they don't do it automatically for you. But basically you come in here, you click the button, within a couple minutes your site's back up. So do it off after hours. But beyond that, it's a relatively painless process to do. But if you forget to do it, it will take your site down after this date. So you'll have to come in here and click the button. So it's best to plan that in advance. And then site visibility permissions. So this is not, so when we talk about site visibility, that has to do with whether a site is public or private. A private site means that a user has to log in first with with Entra ID in order to access, in order to even get to the portal. Even as an anonymous user, you have to log in first with Entra ID. These permissions allow you to control who can enable those permissions. So you can essentially set up users or security groups that you say these people are allowed to control the site visibility of a site. By default, sites are private, so by using this, you can control who's able to make a site public. So this isn't about making an individual site, public or private. That's done in the Design Studio. This is about controlling who has the ability to click those buttons. So that's the security tab. Next, we've got the performance and protection. So these are two great little buttons that have been added in the last couple of years. The first one is the content delivery network. If you're not familiar with what CDNs are, essentially it distributes your static files, images, JavaScript files, CSS files, things that don't change very often, get distributed to servers all over the world, so that when a user goes to access it, rather than downloading it from the one central location, it's in a spot that's a lot closer to them. So for example, let's say that you're an organization and your servers are hosted in North America, but you have clients in Asia. A lot of the bigger, heavier files, like again, images, JavaScript, CSS, copies of those files will reside in a data center in Asia, so that when the user goes to that website, it's a lot quicker to download those files rather than going all the way to North America. So Microsoft makes it easy. You literally just kind of click the button to enable it. So yeah, there's no extra cost unless you're using like the IP restrictions or you have some other very good reason. As a general rule, I would just have that turned on in your production. It's just going to make performance that much better. Secondly, we have the web application firewall. So a web application firewall is a firewall that sits in front of the web application. So in our case, the Power Pages site, that's basically looking for suspicious activity. Again, this is an easy feature to just click the button, say yes, give me extra protection. For the most part, it's only going to do good things. Our recommendation is to have a web application firewall. So really the only reason to click no here is if you need more configuration, because when you click yes, it turns on the kind of the default one that they've set up out of the box. You don't have a lot of control over which rules are or are not running on the web application firewall. So if you're a little bit more advanced with web application firewalls and you want to set up your own with your own special rules, own custom rules, all that sort of stuff, then maybe you turn this off, and because you can add your own Azure web application firewall in front of it. So that would be the reason to turn it off. Otherwise, in production, it's always nice to have a web application firewall. Jim says, I wish it was easy to allow traffic based on geolocation. Yeah, unless you want to get super, you can do it with, I guess, IP addresses, kind of, but I know what you mean. That's a joke there. There's, yeah, unfortunately, no simple way with geolocation. I know that they've got some stuff within Entra ID. So if you happen to be using Entra ID, or I think B2C, if you go into some of the more premium plans, might have some geolocation based stuff. But yeah, nothing geolocation based in Power Pages for access. Next thing we got here is the site health. So we talked about the site checker before. Site checker is pretty simple. You click the button, you let it go. Maybe I should have clicked the button earlier just to see it go, but off it'll go. I don't know, sometimes it'll take yeah, see, it didn't take too long, but you can see here what the warnings are. I've got 3 warnings: content security policy, so I haven't set up the CSP. I've got anonymous access, and so those are a couple warnings. So I can see all the results if I click on this. And again, this is what drives that site health dashboard as well for, you know, how healthy is my site. So each one of these rules, it'll give you a pass or a warning, and as well as some mitigation steps. So a useful little tool here. Microsoft is always adding new rules here. You can see they've got different things: performance, configuration issues, security issues. So you know, best practices to run this tool every once in a while. And you know, if you can automate it, I believe the automated being able to do this automatically as part of your pipelines is part of the release wave, I believe, if I recall correctly. So you'll be able to run this from the CLI, and you know, if you do have any warnings, you could introduce that as part of your pipelines, your automated pipelines, to kind of address those. Going back to my my main page here, the last thing we have here over here are the services. So this is where I can turn on Power BI and SharePoint. Turning on Power BI visualizations is a relatively straightforward process. You check the box. You often have to have some kind of advanced permissions to do these things. Same with the SharePoint integration. The Power BI embedded service is a few more steps as well. The documentation covers how to do these. So if I were to enable the Power BI embedded service, you know, I click the enable button, but just know that there's a little bit to each one of these. So if you are wanting to turn on the Power BI embedded service or the SharePoint integration, check out the documentation. Obviously, it'll kind of step by step tell you all the different pieces that need to go. So this is one step in the process, is to check this box, but there's more to it than that. If you just check this box for SharePoint integration, you won't get SharePoint on your site. There's more to it than that, but this is just one of the steps in the process. So all of these features, they used to exist in what was called the Portal Admin Center. That was deprecated, or actually eliminated, a few months back, because all of the features are now available here. These ones here in the service area were some of the last to get moved over. Now everything's all in here. So you can do everything that you need to on the Power Platform Admin Center without going into that old Portals Admin Center. The last thing that I wanted to check was something that is kind of only available on the if I go into my environments, and that's, we talked about earlier about the upgrade, the early upgrade for the website data, but let's also talk about the upgrades of solutions. So if I go into my environment and I go into Power Pages sites, you'll see that there are the website package details. And this is where we're talking about all of the solutions that are installed when you install Power Pages. And the reason that you'll see this not at the Power Pages site level, but at the environment level, is that obviously all of those solutions are shared across all the sites within a single Dataverse environment. So what they didn't want to do is, if you went to Power Pages site and let you upgrade solutions there, you could be unintentionally affecting other sites in that environment. So that's why these settings are available at an environment level. Same for the switch to the enhanced data model. That's an environment level setting, so that's why you'll see a few of these things here. So when we talk about the solutions, whereas with the web app, Microsoft will upgrade that automatically for you every month. There's nothing you can do to stop it. All you can do is say, put me at the beginning of the list by checking that early upgrade option. For the solutions, Microsoft doesn't really force you to do that. They said you can go to here, it will give you a list of all the ones that have an update available. You check the ones you want and you say update, and then, this process can take a bit, 15 minutes, half an hour. This one does take a little bit, so it's not one of the quicker ones, but this is where you upgrade the actual solutions associated with your Power Pages site. Again, this will upgrade it for all of the sites in this particular environment. So there are a couple of things that are special about the that you have to go into the environment to be able to manage. But then when I click in here, it'll take me to my site page, and then in here there is a purge cache button as well. I believe that will purge the cache of the Power Pages site. So that is another option. That's so if I do this, that is another way to clear the server cache. So that is kind of what I want to go through within the Power Platform Admin Center. As I mentioned, this one place replaces the old Portals. The Portals Admin Center, that is gone. Good riddance. We'll never see that again. Everything can be done through here. Gives you a lot of the things that you need to administer, but obviously once you actually get into administering individual, like the functionality on the sites, that's where you'll go to make.powerpages.microsoft.com, and then you'll have the kind of admin area within the Power Pages Design Studio. Jurgen said, if you select a page in resource section, you can check the updates through there, and it's even outlined in the Learn article. Oh, okay, so you can update. So they do have the portal packages up there. Okay, so this list is similar to things. So I guess ignore what I said about the environments. Now, of course, that will update it for all the environments. That I haven't noticed before. So thank you, Jurgen, for that. So yeah, if you check in an individual environment, in here, you've got those same options that we had in the list of sites on the within the environment. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly jump back to my PowerPoint presentation. So our next call will be April 25th, 3 p.m. Eastern time, which is our common thing. Again, thank you to Jason and the team at MS Dynamics World. And I will open it up to see if there are any additional questions on, again, either today's topic or any other topic. I'm just going to quickly read through here. I see Jim found out that his page or his Bootstrap version is version 3, which, yeah, that's not, that's what most of them are. So if you created it more than a few months ago, it's definitely version 3. If you're in the standard data model, it's definitely version 3. But yeah, if you look at the bootstrap.min.css file, you'll find a version number in there. So 3.3.6 was the version that used before. Now I believe it's might be 5.2.2 or something like that the new one is. But I'm not seeing any other questions here. So I think, Jason, we might be able to wrap it up.
All right, well, great job as always, Nick. Thanks to everyone in the audience for your questions. We will be following up with information on the recording and signing up for our next Portals community call. So with that, I think we can close things out. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.